So, everybody, thanks so much for taking.
Live video, Gowri, that's where you did it. Tonight at 7:24. Hopefully the camera's not too in your way.
Is the camera okay? Is it in your way?
No, you can sit there. Just I can move the camera. All right, so everybody seated? Okay. Good evening and welcome to our New York City area AEM Meetup, organized by Artelect Consulting. Maybe I should get in the camera. So take your seats, and I'll introduce myself and the speaker and the host. My name is Carlos Castaneda Jr., and I am the co-organizer of this meetup, along with Amit Gadia, the CEO of Artelect. Thank you all for showing up tonight, and thank you to Catherine Kendall for connecting us with Rackspace, and thank you to Mike Bielowski for helping us out here at Rackspace. Thanks again to tonight's speaker, Gowrishankar Viswanathan. And apologies for
No, you did very well.
Okay. And finally, I'd like to thank my team members, Amit Gadia, Deval Gadia, Jalaj and Pooja Sharma, and Brad Anderson for helping us keep this community together. Last but not least, a big thanks to Adobe for providing all of us with an opportunity to work with AEM. Our team is actively building AEM developer communities in 7 major cities. That is New York, San Francisco, Chicago, Atlanta, Boston, Washington, D.C., and Seattle. Our New York community is the largest and oldest AEM developer community in the country. We're also managing 2 global communities, the worldwide virtual AEM group on Meetup and the worldwide AEM developer community on Facebook, with close to 3,000 global members. I would strongly encourage you to join these groups and stay updated on all events. A brief background about Artelect. We've been around since 2006 to 2007, and since inception, we have built startups for founders, entrepreneurs, angel investors, and venture capital community in the San Francisco Bay Area. In 2012, we worked on our first project in AEM for Activision and fell in love with AEM. We are an Adobe solution partner company based in San Francisco. We focus on AEM consulting and implementation, services like migration, upgrades, localization, security, and analytics. We provide on-site and in-house consulting services to our customers. We also help our customers build their teams. And finally, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Gowrishankar Viswanathan, otherwise known as Gowri for short. And he's an experienced solution architect in web applications development, specializing in AEM implementations and a co-organizer of this group as well, the New York chapter of the AEM Developer Meetup. I wanted to read a little bit about Rackspace before I hand over the mic. We're here at Rackspace, they're hosting us. And, yeah, so there's a Rackspace Digital for Adobe Experience Manager. Custom hosting and managed cloud options with specialized application support for AEM. Rackspace delivers fanatical support, and that's trademark, I guess, registered for the world's leading clouds. Rackspace Digital for Adobe Experience Manager solutions remove the complexity of architecting, hosting, and maintaining AEM with optimized hosting and managed cloud platforms and specialized application support. Rackspace offers a range of development and infrastructure options, including AWS, Azure, Google, and customized solution and service levels. These options have been purpose-built to deliver optimal performance and provide choices for our customers. And finally, I'd like to hand the microphone over now to Gowrishankar.
Okay, thank you, Carlos, and thank everybody here at Rackspace for giving us the hosting space. Really appreciate. Special thanks to Kate for organizing this. So with that said, let's start with the presentation. Let's have a final round of thank you to Adobe and others later, right? So thanks, Carlos. You were able to pronounce my name to start off. That's really great. So again, it's no surprise I have a very long name, Gowrishankar Viswanathan. That's how I say it. Gowri for short. That has worked so far. So my background is in web development. I've been around doing web development in various phases, writing static HTML sites, still now in content management, e-commerce, building modern web applications, all that said. For over 18 years now, and I've been focusing in AEM-related technologies since 2012. So I architected a few sites over the last 5 years in this technology, and it's really an excellent growing technology. So it's really great to have people even join meetups, learn. Even I learned a few things back in my day during my meetup. So let's start with the topic first. So what I say is AEM Essentials Part 1. At least I am positioning it as a series of presentations that can cover not just some essential topics, how to start web development, how to reuse that development from first project to the next project, how an organization. And I want to address the concerns of various audience, be it developers, be it client companies, be it hosting partners. So across the spectrum, I want to kind of address everybody's needs and challenges they face and how at least I have solved it. So it's just one option where I've solved it, and people in the meetup can even pitch in with their experience and how they solve the problem, so on and so forth. So here we are talking at a very, very high level two very important topics that I've dealt with over and over again. Rapid application development and performance. They are separate topics. I'm just combining them together in this presentation. They're not related to each other in any way. The reason why rapid application development has been very interesting, where many clients really want this, is because when they buy any tool like Adobe Experience Manager, whether it's just one tool, go to any other competitor's tool, they spend a lot of money, invest a lot of money in purchasing them. During that purchasing process, they get to see a lot of demos and say, oh, these are out-of-the-box solutions, out-of-the-box in AEM lingo, called as components, templates that people can really use. But 99.9% and 100% in my experience, we've never used any existing out-of-the-box thing. So when, as a consulting partner, when we go to a client and say, okay, so client, I'm sorry to say this, so now you are looking at 6 months of development, and you have to now spend this much time and also associated money for that thing to get your site up and running, your first site up and running. And if you don't plan well, your second site, you are looking at another 6 months probably. So what I'm trying to solve is, out of the box, what can you do to reuse what is out there? If at all possible, can you ever reuse, number one? And if you decide after that not to reuse, whatever you are building, you want to reuse for your subsequent site or sites in AEM. So right from the planning stage, you need to look at, okay, I'm going to have multiple sites in this platform, rather than I'm going to spend $2 million for licensing various tools and spend so much money for hosting, and then probably give a similar amount of money to a system integration partner, and then I'm going to have just one site. That really not realistic in this day and age, especially. So I want everybody to think along those lines. So that's that. So performance tuning is how we call it. It used to be a very important topic. On and on, it's becoming a little less important because of the fact there are disruptive solutions. For example, like Akamai, you can hide any performance bottleneck you have. Like, nobody needs to know you are having performance bottlenecks, number one. So Akamai can cache the heck out of every page that you build, then there is no request that's really coming into your site, if yours is a very static site. And if you have dynamic features and functionalities in your site, okay, you have cloud, who can expand capacity as much as you want, with that elasticity, that concern is also handled. But still, one has to look into it to understand what can one do to make things better rather than relying on external solutions rather than doing things internally, which things if one can bake into the application itself. So we had some technical difficulties. I had planned some demos with local my AEM running, showing some demos and whatnot. Let's still see if at all it is possible. Let's give one more try with the screen share and stuff. If that is still not possible, then maybe we'll do another session, or maybe I'll record this and put it in the through Artlect in the webinar so people can just see it. So again, even if not the case, this is part 1. So part 2, 3, whatever can address any technical topics that we want and more technical. And in the first session itself, I don't want to go too deep into technical stuff because I want to cater to all audience as well. I don't want to just speak to the developer audience alone. So let's see how it goes, and we can clearly tune the topics and the content of the sessions going forward. So this is what we are looking at in terms of these broad topics of application development and performance tuning. What are we looking at? So application development. So when we say rapid application development, am I rapidly developing just my first application so that my second application may not be so rapid, or do I consider that also in my first application itself? So that's what I'm talking about in terms of application lifecycle management and deployment. And then there are a few development patterns that we can see how to leverage various factors to build and spin an application and launch it very quickly in the AEM platform. So in terms of performance tuning, if not everyone is familiar with the AEM platform, let me just take 30 seconds to reiterate. So AEM platform comes in multiple versions. So when I say versions, it primarily has 2 separate kind of distribution. One is an authoring distribution, and the other one is a publisher distribution. The reason they have these 2 is because the authoring instance is geared to create content. So the system itself is kind of like you have one software, you can customize it to behave one way versus the other way. And one software, you can customize it to behave customizables to kind of enhance capabilities to create content, create and publish content. Whereas the publisher is kind of tuned to render the published content, pretty much. That's their key difference. So they did not want one system to do both. Other tools still do such a thing. They are able to. But then Adobe decided to kind of push an AEM to divide into, I mean, not just AEM after Adobe, but even before that, CQ had similar concepts. So it's their vision that's carried over even today. So authoring in real time, and then raw performance versus cache performance. Like I said, a good cache, a CDN, can hide any performance issue one may have, but then there are still dynamic features like if someone were to log in, or if there's a search index, if there's a transaction. All these things need good performance from the application side rather than it's also impossible to rely on caching for transactions. And then let's see how one does in a demo. So we'll dive into this when we say rapid application development for a typical web app. So I'm just limiting myself to the scope of a web app. There are other type of applications that can have different kind of flow. Those things are kind of beyond the scope, let's say, of this discussion that we have. But then a typical flow for any project, be one starts from scratch, or one starts in between where there's an ongoing huge project. One starts on a module, so there are requirements that gets translated into user experience like wireframes. And then that is becoming an input into a creative design process where one gets the annotations, full-fledged high fidelity markups, and that gets broken down into UI development modules where HTML developers use their skills to create a static version of it. And that gets baked into AEM using backend development by AEM developers, and then that's QA'd and that's launched. This is a normal cycle of how one develops this. Whereas In one, approach of a rapid application development flow, once the requirements come in as a team, they have to all of them see, hey, of these requirements, what can I deliver by leveraging my existing infrastructure? When I say infrastructure, be it reusable code, reusable UI fragments, reusable templates, pages, whatever. What of this can I deliver? So those, they just go directly. So there is very less work in order to deliver that functionality on existing, be it a release, be it a sprint, be it whatever phase of the project is. And then there are two other options we've seen. One is in new development, as in, okay, this requirement is 100% new. There is nothing that you have that's going to satisfy this. For example, if we don't have login functionality, we need login functionality, and that needs to be built. There's no other way to do that. So that kind of comes into the new category where the entire process starts like the previous, like the normal flow. Whereas if something is extendable, as in I already have a module, a component, I can extend that to give this functionality. For example, I have my navigation already, and then now I need a mega menu where my navigation extends, top from vertical and horizontally. So then I can extend my navigation to support that. Or I have a simple footer. Now I have a footer with multiple links and icons and information that I can extend that to deliver this functionality because it's already something. It's not replacing that. Sorry, it's not complementary to that. It's replacing it. So I'm extending it. So these are the various approaches we took in actually 2 or 3 projects that I worked on, where this kind of an approach right from the beginning helped. So what I'm saying is this is not the only thing, but this is the beginning where we start with this approach. And then this philosophy of rapid application development just goes on and on. For example, people have tried to solve this in various phases. For example, from a project execution model standpoint, people here would be familiar with waterfall versus agile, where agile is one of the approaches to kind of deliver things faster. So that could also be called as a rapid application development approach. People who are familiar with agile know Scrums, Lean methodology, whatever methodology one works, they would have worked on that. So after that, from a programming standpoint, sure, one started using templates, components even before AEM came. So that is another approach. People start from a development phase. So likewise, so in every phase of the project, one tries to come up with an option to increase the agility of the project. So when planning rapid application development, we need to kind of consider some of the factors. Am I making it easy to start projects? So because I start this project today, I may have another one a few weeks down the line. This is a marketing department. There's a HR department. They want to do something else. So am I making it easier for everybody? That's where I start. And then the first consideration is quick turnaround, quick launch. So what am I bringing to the table? So let's say AEM is plain vanilla AEM. It has nothing after spending so much budget. Then that's not probably giving biggest bang for the buck, but still it has other features that kind of makes people want it. That's exactly why it's #1 product today in its space. So, but as a system integrator, as system integrators, there are many organizations who have built so-called libraries that can be taken forth from the get-go. One quick example that comes to mind is a company called Cognify. They have a huge framework in this. I'm sure they are your partners also, maybe. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then there is this AEM Garden. So the same approach. People are building such libraries and frameworks which can be reused from one project to another. So these are the early starters. Whereas that didn't translate to other people adapting that as much as they would have probably expected. So what happened was there is, for example, one of the most widely used library today is called ACS Commons. So Adobe's engineers and other open source community, they themselves work on creating these things. They are not something to build web pages and stuff, but
while making it much easier to use the AEM as a platform. They've created so much tools and libraries that people use on a daily basis almost in all projects. So that's at least as much as I know, that's one of the most widely used tool. So we need to look at quick turnaround, like how can I deliver my first project quickly? And then modular. So AEM itself has built in quite a bit of modularity in its structure of various, what I call it, like modules that come in the AEM. Like one can, it has an MVC, not exactly following to the complete principles of model view controller pattern, but it has an alternative approach to MVC, and with the latest version using slick models, so it definitely follows that more than it did before. And then extendable. So we all know that AEM is extendable. That is how it is built in top of AEM. So all of these are some of the approaches one would consider while planning rapid application development. And when we talk about rapid application development, we have to talk about also single tenancy versus multi-tenancy. I'm sure for an organization like Rackspace, this multi-tenancy is one of the core competencies of their business. They cannot say, I have cloud, I can only support one application. that never works. So within AEM, as one platform, as one tool in one what I call as a JVM space process, I need to run multiple applications. That's where I get my biggest bang for the buck as someone who has purchased AEM, right? So when I may start with one project, but then my end goal is to run multiple projects off of AEM. That's where my return of investment is realized. Otherwise, it's not really making any financial sense. So when you start even from the scratch, you start the right way, as in you plan what we looked at in the previous slide. So that paves way for a seamless transition from single tenancy to multi-tenancy. Otherwise, some of the common mistakes people make is go from site 1 to site 2. I cannot reuse anything I've built for site 1 in site 2, even though I may have built my US site. And then for the same organization, for the international audience, I'm extending this. If I don't plan properly, I won't be able to use it. And that's, again, the biggest bottleneck that one has to plan ahead. So we talked about development methodologies. So incremental development. I'm not sure incremental development these days is kind of followed in many projects. So even though I build a small module, so Agile kind of relies on incremental methodology. So what I build now is a fully functional independent module. It's not something I'm only giving you a mock-up. This would be enhanced later, so on and so forth. It's fully functional module. So modular design, reusable UI, code fragments, loosely coupled UI. So Adobe in the last version of AEM introduced a new feature called as template editors. So templates are in AEM lingo are the key tool one uses to create web pages. So, but once a template is built, it cannot be altered. Whereas what Adobe introduced here was something called as a template editor. As an organization, one can just start using it to create and customize templates directly. So that kind of goes against what people will build. So because that is rapid development from the get-go. It's agile from the get-go. So in this picture, I want to give an overview of what is a typical component like we saw in the previous slides. So what I see in the last slide is how a web page looks. So that's what I'm calling as a view. And behind the scenes, if you see, there are so many other things that come into play at various levels, but then one gets translated into another, that gets combined with another, and finally is what you get here in terms of a component in terms of what one calls as a view. This is a typical development. So like we saw in the previous process, UX creative scripts, HTML, CSS, that gets the page built and rendered. So in a newer approach, like when we talk about multi-tenancy, I want an ability where design is fine, but then rest of I want multiple variations of each module that I build, so that from one application to another, or people these days would have heard about A/B testing. A/B testing, again, all marketing people knows what is that. So my hero banner, okay, it looks red for certain users, it looks blue for certain other users. For some users, I'm saying, here's an offer for you. Click this button to save 10% in your next order. For someone else, I'm saying, hey, happy Friday. This is like a flat rate for you. So how do I get all that, right? So for me to get all that is because my functionality changes, but the place in which I'm presenting that is the same. So that is my view. My view is the same. And what I would have normally, this is very abstract representation of what happens there. That's why a demo would have helped, but then we'll see. So the view helper is what kind of aggregates all these variations into one view and it processes dynamically. So Adobe has a tool called Target. That's what one calls as a targeting tool. So targeting itself targets for various types of users, how to customize functionality for those user segments. But everybody don't buy Target. So what they do, they custom make stuff. So this is a methodology where this could be baked into every component. So every component can behave this way. So before we go into performance tuning, maybe let's see some of the things. Maybe we can try once more.
No,
Or should we
do that over the?
So
you can probably share the demo through the, if you can sign into Zoom, share the demo through your hotspot, through your computer through the hotspot, and then being signed into Zoom, you share that screen, and then we can be viewing this shared screen over Catherine's laptop that's plugged in to the big screen, so the rest of the room can see it.
let me see. Give me 1 second.
Well, while we're waiting, we just want everyone to know that it's Carlos' birthday today.
Oh.
Yeah, there we go. There you go. We won't make everyone say happy birthday. Or,
That's okay.
yeah, yeah.
Feliz cumpleaños.
That's right.
Gracias.
Let's say Feliz Navidad. That's. I'm sure Christmas is not the,
Seems like I won't be able to connect to Zoom. Because
You can't log out on that, I'm only connecting the one with the hotspot.
even the hotspot is not supporting.
Oh, wow.
I think maybe if you could record a demo, that would be, would you guys have a place to be able to share that?
We could do that.
Yeah.
All right, let's give it one more try. Let's finish this, and then again, let's see if we could get into that. But before I go into the next topic, for people here and anybody in the live stream, have any questions on this? Because without the demo, just talking about this it's not a great experience. But still, in terms of the core needs for not just for developers, but for organizations has been quick turnaround, right? They don't want to wait for 10 months to launch one site.
No.
It used to be the case,
Right,
but
right.
then now not anymore. A lot of people, every organization I know are investing money in creating these reusable elements. So when they go meet a client for a proposed business pitch, some of their key differentiators are to say, hey, I have this that is going to help you
Right.
save money, as in I'm not charging any royalty or intellectual property for your this project. So I'm just giving it to you as a complimentary feature if we win this project. So a typical project that can take I don't know 10 months. Now they propose okay we can finish in 8 months, for example, because I'm just reusing something. So that could be something like so a lot of companies. Rackspace itself may have dealt with those things. It's one of the biggest vertical for AEM has been retail. So there are a lot of retail companies that use AEM to build their sites, their catalogs and stuff. So there are these organizations who build these catalog management tools. They say, okay, here we have this, one can reuse this as this. So there are a lot of retail practices for these companies that say, oh, we have a checkout module that could be reused across the board. So similarly, authentication, similarly, there is another tool called Hybris, which is e-commerce, right? You should also be dealing with that. So that is one of the biggest kind of a partner application that AEM integrates with. That AEM itself has an integration tool to integrate with AEM and AEM Limbo. It's called an e-commerce connector. Similarly, Adobe has connectors for multiple other platforms also. There are client organizations who says, so there is the generic connector that Adobe gives, but then we have a custom connector that caters to so many other features. Okay, so that's the different thing. So there are so many organizations that build these kind of tools, reusable libraries. Some call them libraries, some call them accelerators. So Hybris introduced this concept of accelerator. These modules and Hybris is called an accelerator. Their WCM itself is called an accelerator. So some call accelerators, some call libraries, reusable IPs, differentiators. So all those kind of tools help in rapid application.
I have a question. So you presented the typical setup for the component and then the alternate. I was just wondering if it's feasible or viable to have maybe a less sophisticated, another alternative that is not at the component level, but like page, like so the component stays the same, but then you introduce A/B testing with, pages at the script level. Like, is that feasible or would
totally.
you?
The way I look at it, for example, in AEM, everything is a component. So when we say a page itself is backed by a component. Normally the case. That may not have any meat in it. It's just a skeleton, building or whatever. But still, one can build that feature in there also. So that's where I want to do a demo. For example, let's say we have a site. Let's call it, for the lack of better word, a red site, as in everything is red themed in that site. Now, I want every functionality the same, but I want to make something as blue. So what is the easiest way to do that? Go to the very top of a body tag or something, inject a new class or something at that level. So there is a red class, the body tag of the red side, and the blue class, the body tag of the blue. And then you just theme for that one class, and then let's say everything inherits from that and gets that color. If you are able to configure this functionality, for example, in AEM, that's one way to look at it, for example. And when you, like you said, many of these retail sites do exactly what you kind of suggested, right? They are geared towards saying, what's the next best offer? So they use recommendation engines, they use personalization engines like Target to kind of deliver this functionality. So if we bake it, that needs to be a server-side functionality. Whereas these tools like Target and other competitive tools, they do that using JavaScript. So runtime in JavaScript goes to the cloud, knows about the user, knows about what content is being presented, looks for any better option, presents it. They use sophisticated algorithms, machine learning, all that jazz, and they were able to get it.
Yeah, in our case, we just had no control over like components necessarily. It would take 3 months if we wanted to modify components. So the client side thing is more realistic.
Absolutely.
Faster.
Speaking of A/B testing, so it's all external to AEM then, so it's not available. I mean, the system itself. So we are going to use either Target, I mean, let's say in an integrated environment, or something external, if we don't use the Target.
There is a rudimentary kind of a personalization tool available, the segments store.
Actually, it was there in the 5.6, I believe, and then they killed those couple of components that they had for A/B testing.
Okay, yeah, but I need to recheck that.
I know
I
that-
forget if the 6.2 has it or not. I don't know, but
Because they want people to buy Target.
Exactly. And they did it on purpose, that's I know.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
that's
think
interesting.
now is, I believe they're looking to integrate AEM and Target a little bit more, but the intention is because you own Target, and it's just gonna be, so that you don't only have to work through the Target UI, you can work through the AEM UI and get some of the Target magic
okay.
there, but the intention is to rip the pieces out and use Target.
That's totally.
Actually, if you're looking into A/B testing, I mean, it's a little bit AM off topic, but it's Google Optimize. It's a service that just released. I mean, it's so perfect. I mean, it's even Target is not a competitor for that, and it's free.
I mean, AEM's or Adobe's entry point was when they were entering in that segment. A/B testing is old school. Now we have something called as multivariate testing, right? I mean, that they came with that concept. But yeah, it's become a revenue stream, so they kind of maximize it pretty much. All right, cool. So if there are, again, any other topics to discuss, let's discuss. Otherwise, let's delve into. So when we talk about performance tuning, like I said, there are various things one can tune, like any JVM, for example, to start with. AEM as a start script, nothing but it's running a job by giving it various, virtual machine arguments, VM arguments. So by default, you give the memory, the JSP compilation thing, the Mac permgen. These are just two things, tip of the iceberg. But then one can give various parameters for garbage collection setup. One has to be clear on how much I'm giving garbage collection memory and the process. So that is it very frequent or too long? Again, it has each solution, each option has its own benefits and bottlenecks. So some of the key things to consider in AEM Author are concurrent operations. So how many people are using it? So number of people does not translate to number of concurrent operations. It's just a factor. So AEM says if 200 people are using it, it's probably 20 operations. It's just a 1/10 scale rule of thumb, and one may not still know what's the real thing. So that's the key thing in AEM, even going to, moving away from the older version of person managers to the current version of microkernels. But then they're also going towards Mongo. That integration is still not very deep, because you are still retaining the JCR structure that is a virtualized file system on top of Mongo. So still it's not as ideal as running anything directly in Mongo or similar document stores. But it is a little better than the thing what they had as RDMS-based person managers back in the day. So currently we have what is arguably called as linear performance for write operations that helps concurrency. But then to improve performance, one also does version purging. So we know version purging. So there are every activation, let's say, creates a version. Like Gowrishankar can have 100 versions and whatnot. Standard operation procedure you do once in a week and retain the last 3, 4, 5 versions and scrub everything off. One thing what's kind of missed is in a typical month, maybe there is one deployment to the production site. But then into your development server, in your test server, QA server, or every other server, the continuous build integration tools just deploy every other hour or whatever. So if you see all these code packages, they themselves are version. You can go and see 20 or 30 deployments that you have done in the past. So each of them, based on how much stuff it has, will become from a few hundred kilobytes to a few megabytes. So even they cause some problem. And online offline compaction tool, if anybody has experience doing that. So the current version, the tools are a little better than before. So the online tool was not that efficient, but they've enhanced it. So this gives a very reasonable performance now. So earlier offline is the only reliable was the only reliable option. Now online compaction, so you can directly go into the console, click a few buttons, and starts the process. It's also very effective. That is offline question. Anybody have experience in that?
Not the latest.
All right, cool. So from an authoring standpoint, these are some of the key things that kind of enhances the performance. So one thing that I'm not really mentioning here because it's a whole new topic, or not new, but huge topic, is if you have DAM and authoring in the same instant, that kind of opens up a lot of issues. So Adobe themselves are kind of trying to tell people you can either run DAM as a separate server or use their online tools like C7 or Dynamic Media or whatever else to kind of offload the huge processing requirements of the DAM. A lot of people themselves, if they are running like media houses, put videos in specific other tools. They normally don't put video in AEM. That's one thing. But with Creative Cloud integration, there's like scope for large amount of binary files, be it PSDs, be it TIFFs, be it whatever other formats that can be. They're all dumped into the DAM, and that has potential to cause delays or slow down the servers for the authors. It's another one to consider. And all those workflows for the DAMs, be it the rendition workflows, be it approval workflows, whatever, based on the number of items in each workflow payloads, they also could cause issues, so one has to be cognizant of that. So if anybody's interested, again, I'm not coming Adobe's thing, but their administrator through course is pretty useful to kind of know about these things and manage. I've taken that as well. So then real-time performance. So again, querying is a common feature and functionality that one uses in AEM. There used to be a thought process earlier that SQL 3 formatted queries are executed faster than the XPath queries, which technically is not true anymore because once it gets translated, it's pretty much the same. That is, at this day's processing speeds and prowess, it's arguably no difference between SQL 3 type of query versus XPath. But querying itself, if one were to consider, definitely one have to use the indexes. The Oak index is a great feature with the 6.0 thing, but Oak index itself has limitations, so it depends on your data set. Do you have million of unique records? Okay, Oak index can help you. If you have in a million records, half of them are duplicates. So Oak index may not be able to help you. Your query will still, indexes themselves are not efficient to manage duplicates. Index is created to have unique identifier for each row, right, pretty much. Be it Oracle, be it a database or be it JCR, doesn't really matter. If the index is not uniquely identified by a record, then it's affected by inference. A query that relies on this particular type of index then still is not that great. So node walking, it's again another JCR lingo for using API to traverse the node, the JCR tree. For large data sets, if you are looking at tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands rows to query and whatnot, that is more effective than run a query. Again, I have benchmarks for that, and I'll share that. But it has been proven to be more effective. Even Adobe's official recommendation would be to use, for huge data sets, use the API, node walking APIs than the regular queries. Again, it's not for nothing that the query, the default behavior is it only returns like 20 top records if you don't use the limits and other factors, properties. So one new concept, or is an evolving concept, is Adobe tried to do it, but they are not fully baked. They introduced Solar, but then Solar is not fully used across the board in AEM implementation. For a site, one can use it, but for AEM's own internal, for example, they introduced OmniSearch, right? They're one of the biggest feature that does not use Solar by definition, by full-fledged Solar by itself. So it still relies on Lucene for a lot of things.
But they have a Lucene engine, I mean, since 6.0, which is actually a Solar background. I mean, that's a backbone.
They both are there. So from 6.0,
yeah,
there is Lucene and there is also Solar.
Yeah.
It's not like it's using one versus the other, it's using both.
Yeah, but when you're talking about org index limitation, you're perfectly right. But that's even like Adobe recommends it's using just for unique properties and so on. But
exactly.
For everything else, there is a Lucene out of the box.
Yes. So Lucene, but again, a lot of people try different approaches. So that's where I am going towards that. Instead of querying, use the search engine. But then search engine, the problem with search engine again is its own way of indexing. Search engine manages the indexes itself. Even if there are duplicate records, it knows it has its own algorithms to index them. But the point is, from the JCR to move the content into those indexes. So even if you have a large set of content, for example, let's say I have, I don't know, let's say 10,000 pages. Let's take a medium example. Let's say I have a medium website, a retail site. I have, based on my number of products in my catalog, each page has a product detail, right? So number of products kind of relates to number of pages. And then there are some marketing pages here and there. Then every new product, every new page is created that needs to be entered into the search index, right? So then what happens? It's again another either workflow or event-based system. All of them gets into the search engine. Now, where is the search engine maintained? If I'm using the built-in, so that's where Solar's biggest benefit is. It helps me to distribute my search indexes. I don't have to maintain all the indexes right inside the JCR, like the folder structure that AEM gives. With Lucene, that was the case. But if I have to go and build all these custom indexes and so, it became more complicated. Maybe someone was able to solve it simpler, but
actually, I can share the experience. Like it works very nicely for us.
Okay.
Specifically with indexes. I mean, it's asynchronous, so it doesn't affect performance of the a real-time application. And at the same time, we are operating on a couple of 100,000 nodes, and even the property, if you're gonna run entire receipt, for the entire repository, it takes in a half an hour we're getting our new index update.
So what we have done, again, based on my experience, we have done crawl-based solutions to get that done once every 2 minutes or hours at a time. We've also done every activation automatically put something in the index. What I was referring is event-based thing. So there is again thought process that's evolving to figure out which is more efficient and which is not. So what I was saying was, what I'm trying to say was, the search index-based querying seems to be the best option with regards to all different types of built-in options, be it queries, SQL, or API. Better than both of them is search engine-based querying mechanism. These days, I've been in one project where we ended up using Elasticsearch, this area as an independent solution. That worked out pretty well, pretty sweet too. Elasticsearch itself is kind of evolving into a big data platform these days, so it's also very efficient. But to be frank, one can really configure things itself or in Solar for that matter. Like I said, Solar gives a distributed indexing ability that's even more useful than having everything in just in one place. And this is exactly why Adobe kind of broke their past practice where everything was indexed in the Lucene index before. Then they stopped it from 6.0. They only enabled content and BAM, or forget the exact paths. They started indexing. The rest is up to the users to configure.
But it wasn't the Adobe solution. It's because the OR didn't support this kind of indexing. So that's a new, since they moved into the new version of the platform, it's just not supported there.
Okay. So no limitation is what you're saying.
Oh yeah.
Cool. So The next thing is we talked about raw versus cached performance. So right, static pages, sure, everything is cached performance. So one don't have to worry about what is cached where. But when we talk about raw performance, then from an application standpoint, we need to look at it in terms of are my application modules being coded properly? Am I using the right, like a better term, if one were to use a result set to query anything? Is the result set properly managed? Is it storing too much than it should? That becomes very critical. The other is external application caching. Let me explain what this means. So there are so many caching, JVM-based caching solutions, like EH-cache, OS-cache, J-cache, so many other, and Java's, Google's Juice. There are so many solutions. Like what, in my experience, what I found was all of them are in-memory solutions. So they are running the same JVM process space. Whereas one example that which I found used, maybe two examples. One is memcached, the other one is called Varnish. They both are processes that are external to my JVM. I could still put stuff there, take them. It's almost like an external search engine, pretty much. I can put stuff, take it back, use it as a cache. So they are very effective for me. So one of the benefits of external thing is even if my memory consumption, my heap space in my JVM has increased or whatever, that doesn't impact the ability of that cache to serve. So if I'm myself running in a cluster, that one cache could serve all of these other nodes also. So we found that helpful in a project, so just putting it out there. And the other option we saw was for internal querying. If the data set is small, maybe a query could be okay, but then standardizing on either an API-based or a search engine-based solution could be more effective in the long run, so that one does that one time and don't have to revisit it at all ever after. So this is just from an AEM's application side of things, right? That's just one part of it. The other part is before going to CDN from an Apache standpoint, what can one do? So I'm using a dispatcher because most of it is aligned with the dispatcher. So again, Apache has this called multi-processing modules. A lot of people don't really look into it. Very few people look into this, go into that level, but people like Rackspace will do it probably, but other hosting vendors do it. So a lot of people kind of understand the limitation unless configured. The default is my one thread in my Apache can process 250, 256 requests at a time. Again, it comes to the concurrency issue. But if tweaked, this can be tweaked to any number, but then that needs to be counterbalanced with my operating system's capabilities, like how much free space is there to handle so much because each incoming request that it processes opens up a file handler, like the ulimits and what all those things come into play. So one has to take note of that. And the other thing is whenever we activate a page, there is this concept of validation management. So if my page that I'm activating is a little lower level, maybe not going to be a problem. But if I put one of the top level pages in invalidated, then based on where my stat file is, AVM kind of clears everything if I use the default mechanism. So this is where ACS comments is very useful. What they've given is if one were to use their dispatcher flush agents and stuff, one can configure if I am, for example, in top level page, I only have to additional these 5 other pages or 6 other pages. One can use regex. One can rewrite specific URLs to support URIs to support the specific pages. So it is much more efficient to work with than the original AEM out-of-the-box solution. So from a real-time performance standpoint, these are the things that have been very helpful, at least in my experience in my projects.
Maybe just to edit, I mean, that in our experience, it's very useful to use there yet another caching layer on top of it, on top of what is provided by Adobe. So that's on top of dispatcher, something else, like a CDN.
So I've used, we've always, let's say, these days I tell people, is any site out there that don't use Akamai? I have no idea. Or Limelight, or Google, or whatever, right? There are exceptions, okay, but many do for some reason, right? But in one case, I've seen there is this company that said, I don't want to use this. They ended up using this tool called Varnish. Like, that's fine, and they were very successful.
So all depends on the specific implementation then.
Yeah.
But like a second tier cache, I mean, works wonderfully. I mean, dispatcher has its own limitations. I mean,
Very few directly go to the end user with just with the dispatcher. At least in my experience, I haven't seen. Maybe in one experience, I have one project they just went to directly with the dispatcher.
Yeah, well, that's why it's so much more than just a cache. The way that they.
Yes. I mean, it started off as a cache, but then.
Yeah, but I mean, even the cache logic is.
Yeah.
sophisticated on a global basis. Dispatcher.
Yeah, edge caching, they kind of innovated a lot in that space.
Has anybody made use of the selector suffix paradigm to try to extend what's cacheable? Because I don't know if this is really considered, proper use, but you can kind of use selectors and suffixes as a way of avoiding query parameters.
Yeah.
Right? Is that common among
we do use it like specifically for like a fields. So not like a JSON and XML, not HTML content. So which is entirely based on those selectors, and we have a different rules assigned per type of the content vessel. If that's what you're asking for.
In part, because we have some of that as well. But even just as a way of caching, if a query is based on let's say a very finite set of metadata. So if you know going in, look, there's only 7 regions in the
Right.
that I have. But the way we constructed the page, users can ask which region do they want, and it becomes a query parameter, or we can make sure we express the request in a certain way so that it just becomes a suffix,
The second part is more common in my experience because we ended up, our URL strategy itself kind of dictates that, right? So the reason why I want to use a selector is exactly, let's say it's cacheable versus query string, for example. But when am I using query string? Let's say when I'm running a search, for example, right? Number one is, do I want to cache that?
No.
Right? No, that's the important thing, right? Sometimes some people want to use commonly used search things. For example, like, I don't want to give the exact client's name, but take for example something like Amazon. You go on Amazon, let's say you say desktop computer, for example. They may want to cache that for every hour, for lack of a better thing. The reason being, it's probably one of the most widely commonly used search term, and their catalog is not being refreshed frequently than every 1 hour, for example. So it makes sense for something like that experience to even cache that. At that time, sure, it's all search, all could be a post, but then these days what I'm seeing is the search request is converted into a RESTful URL. So whatever I search, it ends up becoming a search / something URL. It all looks like a GET. And then I can even get a response out of it and cache it on a timely basis. So this is where AEM's own module does not have an invalidation, like a time to live concept. Right? Akamai has a concept of TTLs, but AEM itself does not have the thing of TTL. That's where again something like the ACS something is used, but Modcache has TTLs. If one were to use Apache for that, or like he's saying, additional second layer in between CDN and dispatcher, something that could be leveraged there as well. So what I'm saying, at least for these kind of use cases, they use flat URLs, not even selectors or suffixes.
There is this kind of technique for the URLs which are easily predictable. It's like a focus generation.
That was my example. It's like we only have 7 regions, so we can predict there are only 7 responses to this. So why not cache it?
If your underlying data set is pretty stable, I would say there is a way to go.
Yeah,
sure. All right, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, we can continue our discussion. I just want to use the opportunity to thank Tatvam, my employer, Artlect, our organizer, Rackspace, our hosts, and Adobe. So without them, this cannot happen. Thanks to all of them. And sure.
Do we want to take questions from?
Sure. Yeah.
Does anybody out in the webinar want to ask any questions? You can type them in. Anything? Daniel, Josh, Roman? No, any questions for the speaker? I think something's coming in. Oh, he's good. All right. All right. Don't see any questions coming in. Is it good then?
Yeah, I mean, we can discuss as long as we have something to discuss.
No, what do you have in mind for the next sessions? You said this is.
Oh, I make an announcement actually.
Okay.
As long as we don't have any other questions coming in, okay. Thank you for everyone for coming tonight. Thank you to Gowri for your great presentation, your expertise and insight.
I'll see what FND
I would like to invite anyone who is interested in sharing knowledge and presenting to our community or co-organizing a meetup to come to me or Gowri. Have a great night, everyone. But finally, I should say, I'd like to announce our meetup's next event on Tuesday, May 23rd, when we will present Segal Savad, AEM for mobile. Exciting. That's it.
All right.